There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Please be seated.
Are we in the same meeting?
It seems we are out because now it's mute.
Can't hear the deputy speaker there at all. Oh, now we can him up. Yes.
Honorable members.
We can pick you up now.
Honorable member, please hold on. The ICT team there, you shouldn't be making this mistake. We know this happens, but you shouldn't be doing that. Thank you very much. Let's proceed. There are 4 supplementary questions. This is to remind you. On each question, parties are given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose supplementary questions to. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized. In allocating opportunities, the principle of fairness, amongst others, has been applied to state the blending glimpses of the obvious. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip in the House or elsewhere will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all supplementary questions have been answered by the executive, we will proceed to the next question on the paper. The first question has been asked by Honorable E.M. Buthelezi to the Minister of Public Enterprises. I have been informed that the Minister will be answering questions through the virtual platform. Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon, Deputy Speaker, and good afternoon to the honorable members. The Honorable Buthelezi's question needs to be placed in the context, as he correctly points out, of climate change more generally, and in particular the COP26 meeting that took place in Glasgow over the past 2 weeks. Climate change, as we know, is a danger to humanity, and nobody on this earth is going to be exempt from the impact of climate change, be it rising levels of water, melting of ice, rising in particular of temperatures across the globe, and similar changes. At COP26, Deputy Speaker, South Africa, through a decision by Cabinet, presented its nationally determined contribution, which was one of the matters that COP26 had to entertain, to establish by what temperature global warming can be reduced, and whether the target of 1.5 degree increase in temperature compared to the pre-industrial stage would be met or not. And South Africa's nationally determined contribution was targeted at that range of 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees. Secondly, the issue at COP26, which was quite sharply debated, into which Honorable Buthelez's question fits, is who is going to finance this transition? So in South Africa's case, 41% of our emissions actually come from electricity production. And therefore, on the one hand, we've got to prepare for the transitioning of Eskom and other such equipment or facilities that we have at a national level to a more climate-friendly and decarbonized state. But equally importantly, there are other sectors of the economy that would be impacted as well. So South Africa put forward 3 projects, if you like, for consideration by those who would be interested in financing the transition, which in the main has to be the developed countries, through or with multilateral financial and other institutions. And those 3 projects were the Eskom Just Energy Transition Project, secondly, the Green Hydrogen Project, and thirdly, transitioning South Africa's automobile industry to the production of electric vehicles. So the Just Energy Transition, Honorable Deputy Speaker, is a project that Eskom has developed at the Komati Power Station. And once it gets the appropriate backing, financially speaking, it would have an important impact in terms of repurposing the power station, firstly. Secondly, retraining workers who are currently employed at the power station, but also preparing new workers for the new energy situation that we will be moving into. And thirdly, mitigating the impact on communities that are in some relationship with the power station or with the coal mines themselves. This finance is not for the debt of Eskom. This finance is for the transition project itself that was announced between several developed countries and our own President Ramaphosa, at the beginning of COP26. But let me clarify that this is an offer from the developed countries. It is not a deal, as this question and other questions propose. Negotiations will now take place at a technical level to appreciate whether these offers will be compatible with South Africa's financial requirements and capability. And once this...
I'm sorry, your time expired. Yes, sorry.
I'll just finish the sentence, Deputy Speaker. Once the negotiations are completed, we will keep the National Assembly informed. Thank you.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable E.M. Buthelezi. He is also on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, but I'll be taking the question. It's Honorable Machozi.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Yes. Minister, what are the views of the Minister on the proposals by the CEO of Eskom for government to take over 200 billion of the 400 billion debt faced by Eskom, given that National Treasury in the medium-term budget policy statement did not make any provision for Eskom? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Eskom debt issue, of course, as you know, has been very much with us, but let me emphasize that this financing offer has nothing to do with Eskom debt. Secondly, the Eskom debt was accumulated because a decision was made by previous governments to finance the development of Medupi and Kusile through the tariff applications to NERSA and not by any equity injection. Thirdly, there are various proposals that we will consider together with the National Treasury and other stakeholders on how the Eskom debt should be dealt with. And clearly, amongst the role players that have to take part in this process will be government itself, will be the PIC, which holds the bonds issued by Eskom, and there could well be other players, including the restructured Eskom. As you know, we are separating generation, transmission, and distribution as well. So what we will have soon is, if you like, a pro forma balance sheet of a new Eskom with a different distribution of debt, with the acceptance and buy-in of the lenders that have lent money to Eskom. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable J. Shabalala.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I'll take the question on behalf of Honorable Shabalala. I'll fill the question. All right. I'll fill.
Honorable member, don't engage, please. You are taking your time.
All right. No, thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Minister, in the light of the fact that the unbundling of Eskom into 3 entities has been considered as a turnaround strategy and a business model to address Eskom's solvency and liquidity risk, A, what are some of the efficiencies that will be unlocked by the unbundling exercise? B, what measures and progress has been made to ensure that the donors of the 130 billion investment in renewable energy follow through on their commitments? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Hadebe. Honorable Minister.
Deputy Speaker, on the second point about the 130 billion rands, as I indicated in my initial response, that money is not directly linked to any turnaround strategy. It is directly for the purpose of the 3 projects that government has in mind, i.e. the just energy transition at Eskom, secondly, green hydrogen production in South Africa, and thirdly, production of electric vehicles eventually in South Africa as well. In relation to the efficiencies that will be unblocked as a result of the unbundling stroke separation of generation, transmission, and distribution, firstly, it will allow for greater participation by the private sector and others in terms of the generation of energy. Secondly, it will establish an independent transmission company and buying office, which will be able to compare prices and decide which offer in terms of the sale of electricity it is willing to enter into. And thirdly, it will attract investment in the transmission grid and perhaps even the distribution grid as well, which is the responsibility of most municipalities in the country, although not all. And in that sense, eventually, over a very long process of time, you'll have a different structure for the electricity industry in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The third question is asked by Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Minister, there are many questions surrounding the proposed 130 billion in concessional and grant funding over the next 3 to 5 years to support the country's transition away from coal and develop new sectors such as Eskom, energy transition, electric vehicles, and green hydrogen, as pointed out by yourself, Honorable Minister. The ACDP is pleased that you made it very clear that there's no deal yet, but negotiations will still take place. What steps, Honorable Minister, will be put in place during negotiations to ensure that such a transition is financed in such a way that it does not unduly burden not only Eskom, you made it very clear, it doesn't really relate to Eskom, but more importantly, the fiscus in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
This, of course, is a government project. It's not a Eskom project, and there is a group of ministers who've been led by Minister Creasy in this particular regard. Secondly, we have the establishment of a technical team that involves both South African representatives and experts on the one hand, and international experts as well, that would engage in the negotiations. Thirdly, we need to be very clear right at the outset as to what amount of that 130 billion is grant money, in other words, money that doesn't have to be paid back. And secondly, how concessional is concessional. And then lastly, we share the objective of Honorable Swart that this should not place inordinate burdens on the fiscus, And that is why looking at this at a broader level is becoming so important. But let us emphasize that the 130 billion rands is merely a start. In other words, the $8.5 billion doesn't cover all of the climate transition issues and adaptation issues that we are confronted with, or many developing countries in the world are confronted with as well. There's a lot more money that needs to be raised by the developed countries, some before 2030, some after 2030, during which time some of us might be around and some of us might not be around. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The next question, and the last in this first question, is asked by Honorable Kachalia, EKY.
Thank you, Speaker. Given the potential availability of the 130 billion referred to, what assurance, if any, can the Right Honourable Gordon give the House that these monies will be tightly monitored to prevent leakage to corrupt cadres as has happened in the past, and that there will be no inflation of associated costs to grease the palms of BE middlemen, contractors and tenderers, viewed, of course, against the background of President Ramaphosa having been in charge of a war room and a 6-point plan since 1914 to little or no effect.
Minister?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And thanks to the Honourable Member for his question. President Ramaphosa's role over a period of time has always been to ensure that we have a sustainable Eskom at the end of this process. Nobody understood the kind of damage that was taking place during the period that Mr. Kachalia mentioned. And even now, I don't think we understand fully what capture has had as a negative impact on Eskom's culture, on Eskom's productivity, and the honesty of people who are working at our power stations and other facilities as well. So everything will be done to achieve an objective that all honest people in this country will affiliate themselves to, that if we do successfully negotiate this amount of money and more ultimately as well, that these amounts of money will be tightly monitored, that no cadre of any political party must be the beneficiary out of this process, and that thirdly, we require, Honourable Deputy Speaker, for all political parties to call for a very different kind of business culture in South Africa, so that this form of parasitism that we've seen for many years, where the easy way of making money is through, let's call it stage managed tenders and other processes, which frequently happens in state entities, is something that does not happen into the future. So all of us have an interest in ensuring that the country puts its best foot forward, and that we want to discourage any dishonest behavior on the part of anybody. But changing the business culture, which is the other side of any corruption coin, is going to be a key national mission that all of us need to embrace. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. The next question, 245, has been asked by Honorable F.E. Kumalo to the Minister of Transport. Minister Mbalula?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker and honorable members. Prasa has put in place a detailed recovery plan aimed at rehabilitating and replacing stolen and vandalized infrastructure. The affected infrastructure include the replacement of stolen overhead traction equipment, OHTA, substations, signaling, pairway, and stations. Progress in rehabilitating infrastructure and recovering services is at various stages across corridors. A phased approach has been adopted with high-density corridors prioritized with quick turnaround times and allocation of capital funds. Of high priority are the two presidential projects, being the Mabopane Corridor in Tshwane and the Central Line in Cape Town. Work on the Mabopane Corridor is nearing completion and is on target to resume phase 1 of services by the end of November 2021, while the Central Line in Cape Town is experiencing delays due to challenges with the removal of informal settlements on the track and along the rail reserve in the vicinity of Langa and Philippi. Other corridors are at various stages in the procurement process to appoint consultants and contractors to commence with rehabilitation of rail infrastructure. Prasa has relooked at its security deployment strategies, including the armed response patrol patterns over and above the internal security operations. Prasa will be deploying a further 5,000 guards sourced through various private security service providers during the month of November 2021, which will bolster the coverage of its infrastructure with both armed and unarmed guards based on a resident security risk assessment report. The report advises on deployment informed by the corridor recovery approach adopted by the organization. In reinforcing boots on the ground, Prasa will be making use of security and surveillance technologies as part of its phase 2 deployment from December 2021. The additional measure to improve security is the construction of concrete walls along the identified rail corridors, substations, relay rooms, and control rooms. The wall will be impenetrable and vandal-proof. The material to be used will provide extra strength with a height of up to 4 meters, reinforced with an electric fence and closed-circuit television and motion detectors installed. Prasa will continue with its risk-based approach in deploying further security where necessary. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. The next first supplementary question on this question is Honorable Kumalo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for the detailed reply. The additional security that Prasa is implementing will assist the commuters of South Africa and also see the implementation of security services on the moving of trains to safeguard the commuters from thugs. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Deputy Speaker,
yes, sir.
And thank you, Honorable Member. Prasa has adopted a total deployment strategy. There will be deployment on platforms, in between stations, at stations, and inside the trains to safeguard commuters. Priority will be given to high volume corridors, as well as based on the corridor recovery plan. Furthermore, in terms of the security deployment strategy, threats and risk assessment is ongoing to determine deployments of armed and unarmed guards across all our areas of operation. Threat assessment includes identifying drugs and explosives inside the platforms in between stations and inside the trains. And we all know that the vandalism that took place as a result of the shutdown, but not necessarily that it took place only during the shutdown. It only escalated during the shutdown. And beyond that, with the riots that took place, you could see that the reaction was very good in terms of security deployment at Prasa. I've heard people saying that, what are you protecting when there is nothing? Park Station, there is a lot to protect there and many other corridors in the country. And when it was bombarded and attacked, there was fire to fire, tooth for tooth, and eventually the entire precinct of the Park Station is still intact. And that is the manifestation of that security deployment we're seeing currently. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next supplementary question is asked by Honourable Hansinger. Is that how you say it?
That's fine. Thank you, Deputy Chair, or Deputy Speaker, rather. Minister, it is a known fact that billions of rands in losses to our railway infrastructure occurred due to the vandalism, theft, and damages. While most of this occurred during lockdown, it was directly caused due to Prasa's infrastructure not being protected and not being guarded. Now, security contracts intended to protect this infrastructure ended and lapsed from August 2019, long before COVID and lockdown. Why did you not renew these contracts in time? Why did you open this window of exploitation, and who is now accountable for this obvious blunder and huge loss to the country and millions of users? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Hansinger and the Deputy Speaker. I've explained and I'm explaining once more that when I came in as a minister, the previous board, which I disbanded, took a decision which was correct because it was a decision informed by the outcome of the Auditor General, that Prasa had a lot of irregular security contracts. What the board did not do when it implemented the Auditor General's report on irregularity of the security contracts was to implement alongside a contingency plan, which they did not. And they did the right thing on the other hand, but on the other hand, equally, there was a dereliction of duty in terms of oversight and implementing. Whilst implementing a correct decision, they were supposed to implement a decision to protect the corridors and the open lines of Prasa. So that is what, among others, exacerbated the vandalism, and over and above that, COVID shutdown. But the vandalism at Prasa did not start during COVID. You are right, Honourable Member. It was long before then. And that is why you've got occupation in areas like the Central Line, because it is lack of security lapse, lack of security, lack of management. So where there is no leadership, you could see, I will be the first to admit that you could see at Prasa. So that is why at the present moment, the security approach that is being implemented there is protecting the little that we've got and building on that, and ensuring that we revitalize the other corridors that have lapsed, and we intensify security like I've outlined before then. So that is really the reason, but we are on the recovery as we speak. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The third supplementary is asked by Honourable General Chungu. Also on the digital
Thank
platform.
you, Chair. Minister, Passenger Rail Agency no longer serves passengers across the country. Here in Cape Town, what used to be a very reliable form of transport in the form of trains has repeatedly collapsed. Yes, I heard you earlier on saying that there has been delay in fixing the lines. You have repeatedly deceived the people of Cape Town by making assurances that you will fix the rail network problem and restore the functioning of the trains.
Honorable Member.
We want to ask you yes.
Just 1 second. Yes.
Yes, I'm rising on Rule 84.
Yes.
The member just said the minister has deceived.
Yeah, okay.
Has deceived the people. So
yes.
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 Rising on that rule. So, Rule 84.
Yes. Honorable Member, please mind your language.
Thank you. For the sake of progress, I will withdraw. We want to ask you again, Minister, here in this room, that by when will the trains function to their full capacity again in the city of Cape Town? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, I wish to remind you, please, to sit apart. Not too close. There's a requirement for social distancing. I know you miss each other, but please just allow the protocols to be adhered to. Yeah, okay. Minister? You can't have this conversation across the platform. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. At the present moment, what is happening is Prasa is working on removing the people who have encroached on the line, and that is what has delayed. Resources have been committed on the revitalization program of the central line. I agree with Honorable Nolchungu. This is a great inconvenience to the working class of our country. Once that process of removing those people and getting land for resettlement, we've been back and forth on this question. We found land, and then at some point the decision is being reversed. We're working with the City of Cape Town and the provincial government and HDA Human Settlement to find land for those people. And once we resettle them, I can tell you, even before Christmas, work in terms of construction is ready. Resources are there and all of that. And it will take us longer now because the legalities and litigation involved in this. At some point, land was found, and land belonged to other people, and they then threatened to take us to court that they can't surrender that land to Prasa, and so it delayed the whole process. So it is a really frustrating process, and we want it to go through as soon as possible. And I'm hopeful, Chair. I can't commit to the exact deadlines, but we are working around the clock to get the people removed around there and to ensure that we get work going in the central line. It's a huge setback for the working class and the workers, particularly in central Cape Town. That corridor on its own, it transports more than 20,000 people on a daily basis. And you can imagine now, those people have shifted to buses and taxis, which means they are working for commuting, meaning for transport. And whereas we alleviate their situation by intervening through trains. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Please mind your microphone so that please, members who are on the virtual platform, just check your gadgets and switch off the mic. Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. It's in relation to what the Minister was saying about land. So he says he's frustrated by the process. So I was asking if he's going to support the motion of the EFF for expropriation of land compensation, so that we can alleviate that frustration of the minister.
Honorable Cindy Chikunga, please off your microphone. Please switch off your mic. Honorable members, if you have stress, it's negotiations out there. Go test your muscles there, not in the house. Honorable members, Hoka, Work hard, please. Good exercises out there. And you don't need to be giving advice each other on the platform here. Do it outside, please. Yes. Honorable members, we go to the next supplementary question, the last on this question, and it's asked by Honorable KP Stole.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Whether in light of the recent how well connected in 2021 Transportation Smart Summit that took place on the 12th of October at Hawaii Center, which the theme was dive at the digital transformation of the Republic range, aviation's road sectors, and given the existing challenges in the listed sectors. This department has a plan to address the call for digitalization within the next 5 years in order to ensure that transport is a catalyst of economic growth. If that's so, what are the relevant informations? If not so, why not? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
I didn't hear Honorable Stoll properly, but it looks like, Chair, this was not a follow-up question on the matter we are dealing with of the passenger rail. It looks like it's a new question altogether. I didn't hear him at all. I mean, I was struggling, but it looks like he's asking a new question.
Honorable members, there are difficulties where Honorable Jobe is. That's why we couldn't hear him properly. It's not just him.
I'm really sorry, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member. Honorable Singh, yes.
It's Singh here. Could I repeat the question so that the Minister can understand its relevance?
Yes, please. Yes.
Am I clear? Thank you.
Yes, you are very clear to me. I can hear you, Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Whether in the light of the recent Huawei Connect 2021 Transportation Summit that took place on the 12th of October at Huawei Center offices, of which the theme was Dive into Digital, specifically aimed at the digital transformation of the Republic's rail, port, aviation, and road sectors, and given the existing challenges in the listed sectors, whether his department has a plan to address the call for digitization within the next 5 years in order to ensure that transport is a catalyst for economic growth through smart infrastructure.
Minister?
Honorable Deputy Speaker, that is question 212. The question asked by Jobe, Honorable Jobe, is question 212. It's on the list. Yes, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
All right. The best is to move ahead. Honorable Singh, I'm afraid your intervention will later. Let's go ahead to the next question, honorable members, and that's by Honorable Kachalia. That's question 226 to the Minister of Public Enterprises. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Minister of Public Enterprises and the Eskom Board of Directors sign, as you know, an annual shareholder compact that deals with Eskom's generation performance, amongst other things. The Eskom management has developed a number of plans, including a generation recovery plan to improve plant performance and minimize load shedding. But clearly, this plan is in requires an urgent enhancement because of our more recent experiences. But let me emphasize that for Eskom to work properly, it is not just Eskom that has responsibilities. The entire ecosystem that supports Eskom at a policy level, at an administrative level, and at a regulatory level, including the business people who relate to Eskom, as I pointed out earlier on, need to give Eskom its cooperation. So in relation to the availability of energy, there are plans to improve power stations, There's the old 9-point plan that requires enhancement. There's the driving down of partial load losses. There's the acceleration resolution of the new build defects, that's defects at Medupi and Kusile. And the suppliers of coal must ensure that they give us the right coal quality. Similarly, at the level of leadership and culture, these are emerging as crucial issues across Eskom as well. And the expectations are being made clear to the senior management about what is expected of them. There's an increasing technical focus and focus on excellence. Power station visits and monitoring is happening a lot more regularly. There's active risk management, which I'll come back to in a moment. Enhancing knowledge of senior managers within Eskom so that whilst they might have technical skills, they also gain at the experience level. But above all, to restore pride in employees, as they once used to have, that we are working for a well-functioning national entity. In terms of skills and resourcing, specialist and more experienced skills are being brought in. We are driving capability building for honest employees and managers. And those that are dishonest, we must say clearly to them, please go and find a job somewhere else. Eskom doesn't need you. And we don't need the undermining that was referred to in a portfolio committee meeting earlier on. And there are similar other efforts to improve skills and resourcing. But we have to be frank with the country, Deputy Speaker, and say that these are some of the risks, that certain people who tweet regularly and want to demonstrate that they're in touch, inverted commas, with failures at Eskom of one unit or the other, are clearly on the path of rehabilitating themselves so that they don't go to jail, but they become important disruptors. Secondly, internal collaborators, as I said, and the chair of the portfolio committee referred to them as mischief makers. The law enforcement agencies need to come to the party, and they must increase the risk of detection of malfeasance within Eskom so that there's the reorientation of behavior according to the right values. And lastly, we must call on the leadership of the two principal trade unions that they should work with us and not against us. They must also become protectors of an important national entity which supplies energy for this country, which is quite essential, as one of the honorable members pointed out in the portfolio committee a few hours ago, for attracting investment and growing the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Kachalia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. With regard to the concrete steps, which should have been identified already, in all honesty, emerging from the availability of the 130 billion from the UN Climate Change Conference negotiations, can the Right Honourable Gordon provide the House with a time frame during which we can be apprised of the period going forward during which load shedding can be expected, lamentably, to continue as it is?
Honourable Minister.
Deputy Speaker, as Mr. Kachalia would know by now, that we are dealing with units at power stations that don't necessarily give us the certainty that he is looking for. And what, excuse me, appears to be well functioning at a particular point in time can malfunction either because of disruptions or other factors that suddenly appear and undermine the confidence with which we can say load shedding will not continue. So put the answer in a different way, Deputy Speaker. Load shedding is going to be significantly less likely if we have 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts extra that Eskom has available to it, so that these accidents, intentional or otherwise, can then be absorbed as part of the malfunctioning of certain units. The 130 billion rands, as I said earlier on, although not relevant here, Deputy Speaker, is not for the purposes of current operations, but as power stations are repurposed for either gas or for renewables, you will find that some of these malfunctions will actually fall away as well. But we want to tell the country that we want the same certainty as government that the country wants and every citizen wants. And hopefully we can announce a further set of measures soon, which will provide some of that certainty. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The second supplementary question is by Honorable Kaya Makaka.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lizolunga lolimi lwami kwelinye ilanga.
It is about. Aside from the recent arrest of the two Eskom employees and a major supplier that was charged with theft of 100 million worth of fuel a month, which are the positive steps taken, what major accountability measures does the department intends to undertake to discourage unethical behavior and hold the management accountable at Eskom? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kaya. Uzawufika ngakithi. Minister?
Honorable Deputy Speaker and Honorable Makaka, as you know, the additional measures would be, as I pointed out in the risks that I outlined, that the risk of detection of malfeasance is a huge deterrent in any normal organization. And if we can improve that on the one hand and consequence management on the other hand, we'll begin to see proper behavior. But as I said earlier, those employees that think they want to get ahead in life and move from one type of expensive car to the next one with unearned money must actually go and find a job somewhere else. Secondly, the Eskom management must not hesitate to fire people. And we'll have to invite once again the trade union leadership that is representing the majority of people at Eskom to work with us in this particular regard, so that they must be equally committed to ensuring that any form of mischief has to be removed from within Eskom itself. And as you clearly pointed out, there are some positive steps in terms of arrests. There are also a follow-up to that, because there were 8 other employees that were suspended, but that is just not good enough. That is not acting as a sufficient deterrent for mischief makers outside of Eskom and within Eskom to stop conducting themselves in that kind of way. Additional measures, as you point out, and as I've pointed out, need to be taken in this particular regard. And the country must become intolerant, as must Parliament, Deputy Speaker, of anybody who wants to undermine a national asset like Eskom. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question is asked by Honorable Steve Swart.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. May I, with your permission, leave my camera off because I'm struggling with connection issues. Honourable Minister, the ACDP shares the deep concerns many South Africans have about Eskom and the risk it poses to the economy. And Minister, you served with a number of us on the Eskom inquiry. You will know there are a number of vested political, economic, and even criminal interests in Eskom, which are resistant to government's and management's reform program. And you correctly referred to recent wins, such as the arrest of certain employees at Taputa and the issue of the 100 million rands worth of oil per month that has been stolen. This is absolutely disgraceful. Now, Honourable Minister, would you agree that surveillance at power stations can be improved, firstly, and secondly, as I've often said, should we not call law enforcement agencies such as the NPA to account as well with progress, with prosecution of such matters, knowing that prosecution is the best detection and the best deterrence to criminal activities at Eskom? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Swartz. We did indeed share very important experiences together in the inquiry into Eskom and finally the report that was presented to the National Assembly. Let me agree with you that surveillance can be improved, but I'm not sure how many of us have been to a power station. Those are huge physical entities and difficult to monitor all the time, but efforts are being made by the current management to place CCTV cameras and other pieces of equipment in the right kind of place in order to detect malfeasance. Secondly, I also agree with you that the NPA needs to up its game, and that many more people need to find themselves in the dock and eventually in orange uniforms, because that is going to be the best deterrent. And then thirdly, that there are many criminal interests, both inside and outside of Eskom, that have benefited in a financial sense over a long period of time, some running into billions of rands, and those must be called to book, including by Parliament itself. There's no reason why business people can't be called to Parliament and asked to explain how did they actually benefit through their relationship, proper or otherwise, with Eskom itself. And I think that will set a new precedent in South Africa, Deputy Speaker, as I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mautwe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The Minister earlier on said people are tweeting. Well, those that are tweeting that we know of are the former CEOs, which is Brian Molefe and Matela Gogo, and they dealt away with load shedding. It's a fact. During the time of Matela Gogo and Brian, there was no load shedding. Now, the question that we are having is, the current CEO who was appointed, and 6 months later, he said he invites private sector to produce, who is now sitting still at Eskom, still inviting private sector, who believes that Eskom is a dead horse. What is the Minister of Public Enterprise still doing about the CEO who doesn't believe in his own company? What is he going to do about that incompetent CEO? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Ms. Matwe, Deputy Speaker, for your information and the information of the National Assembly and the public that's listening, was part of the Portfolio Committee meeting earlier on, where the current CEO apologized for the reference to the dead horse. And that's the end of the matter as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, if Ms. Matwe wants to identify herself with individuals who were either directly or indirectly connected with corruption and malfeasance and state capture, well, then that's an interesting political declaration that for the country to take account of. Pity that it comes too late for the local government elections, so that we know what we actually are dealing with and what the citizens are dealing with. And thirdly, the efforts at the moment are not about the private sector. They're about employees within Eskom who must do their job honestly, and not undermine through their own initiative or at the behest of people outside of Eskom, the institution itself, and therefore the country. And we must decide which side of the line we stand on. Either we want to defend the corrupt, or we want to say the corrupt must end up in jail. It's a very simple question. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, my question is not answered. Can
no.
the Minister please answer my question? What is he going to do with the incompetent CEO
Honorable
who's
Member,
leading a dead horse? You must tell us.
Honorable Member.
In fact, there was no load shedding during Brian Molefe.
Honorable Member, take your seat. Don't be argumentative. Go and read Hansard if you didn't hear the Minister answering you. You'll get your answer there. Question 240 has been asked by Honorable Mpushe to the Minister of Tourism. I've been informed that, oh yeah, of course, I mean, like what? Go ahead, Minister.
What might you have been informed of, Chair?
I decided not to go there, Minister. Why do you drag me there?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, indeed, the question is asked by Ms. Mpushe, and she asks what are some of the notable achievements that have emanated from the implementation of the Tourism Sector Recovery Plan since the plan was implemented, and B, the intended long-term achievements that can be yielded from the plan after the COVID pandemic. We haven't worked out when the COVID pandemic will end, but I will answer A and B. The notable achievements that have emanated from this have been based on our tourism sector recovery plan, When there's a lockdown, we discovered that global supply chains, travel and tourism is amongst the worst affected sector. And as an immediate response, we had to put in place a recovery plan in the hope that this would be rolled out as soon as we are able to move out of the higher stages of the pandemic. When the COVID pandemic struck, in order to support the sector, the government put aside an amount of 200 million to cushion the industry. The tourism sector recovery plan was adopted by Cabinet, and it has been presented here in Parliament. Since the adoption of the recovery plan, which was based on 3 pillars that would help the sector recover as quickly as possible, we have been able to achieve the following. Pillar 1 is a plan to protect the industry and to ensure that we are able to rejuvenate the sector, and the following achievements are worth noting. Feedback from the industry indicated that trade and consumer confidence is higher where the government has an instrument in place as compared to a voluntary industry-based mechanism. We as a government were there to ensure that the industry was protected by putting in place norms and standards for safe operation of the tourism sector in relation to COVID-19. These norms and standards were approved by Cabinet, and we can attest to the fact that they have paid off. Secondly, there's an infrastructure maintenance program which we put in place. Currently, the department is involved in the development and maintenance of state-owned and community-based tourism assets in about 100 sites across the country. There's infrastructure maintenance rollout taking place in 19 national parks, and about 40 provincial sites across the country are part of the expansion of this program. Under Pillar 2, we made provision for reigniting demand. We have made progress and notable success in the following. 1, you will know the amount of effort that was put into persuading the British government to remove us from the list. We have finally been removed. Our greatest gratitude to all those role players who made it possible, but in particular I would like to single out the Deputy High Commissioner of the British Embassy in Pretoria. We are now off the red list, and we are hoping that all other countries, including the United States, Brazil, Germany, and other countries, would follow suit. Further, South African tourism sourced and submitted 39 bids for international business events to be hosted here in our country between 2022 and 2025. The combined estimate value is about 528 million, and a potential to attract a huge number of international guests to our country. We launched a Travel Week consumer campaign themed Great South African Sale in August 2021, and we promoted it via digital platforms, street pole advertisements, billboards, television, digital media, radio, etc., etc. This resulted in 670 direct deals which were recorded across all provinces. Domestic tourism has shown resilience even in the face of COVID, and we are beginning to ease our restrictions in government, and our industry is beginning to pick up.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank
Your
you.
time has expired. Thank you. The first supplementary question is by Honourable Mpushe.
I'll be taking the question.
In future, members generally, I know there are assumptions about this, for purposes of recording, just do say that I am Lechisa Tsenudi, I'll be taking her question or his question.
Thank you very much.
For record purposes.
I'm Hein April, and I will be taking the question on behalf of Honourable
Deputy Speaker? Deputy Speaker?
Yes? Yes? I'm listening.
I'm Honourable Mpushe.
We are listening. Why are you speaking?
I'm Honourable Mpushe, Deputy Speaker.
No, you are out of order. Honourable Mpushe, please go ahead.
Deputy Speaker, as a Deputy Speaker, I speak as a duty whip.
No, Wait a minute.
Let me
the
address
wires have crossed.
Can
here.
I address you?
Honorable members, take your seat. You can't all be standing.
We must go for coalition.
Honorable Khadebe. Hey,
Coalition.
This
This is the confusion in the ANC.
Honorable
Deputy
Maute.
Speaker. Okay.
You really missed performance, right? That microphone is very attractive today. Please, honorable members, this is why wires are crossing right now.
All right.
What are you raising, honorable member?
Deputy Speaker, is a whip of the ANC. I want to put you closer to the order paper or the paper you have. The person who's supposed to do the follow-up is Mpushe, as cited. So apologies for that confusion. So she's online. Thank you. Moto, when are you excited?
Okay. All right. Yes, now the honorable member has stood up to say he's going to take the question. Please go ahead. Please go ahead, honorable member.
Thank you very much.
It seems the wires are crossing again.
Go ahead, honorable member. Don't replay who are here, please, man. You can't keep talking. Go ahead, honorable member.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
The member knows. You just keep quiet. Go ahead, honorable member.
Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Honorable Celeste Majotina, honorable members of this August House, all protocol observed. I greet you this afternoon in the name of the ANC and its allies. Honorable Minister,
the speech or
thank
the
you
question?
very much for the comprehensive reply. Would you further elaborate in your efforts to build back better and ensure that we have a more sustainable and resilient tourism sector in South Africa post-COVID-19 pandemic? Which areas has your office identified that need improvement, and what programs are being implemented in order to sell South Africa brand and restore travelers' confidence, even from those countries who still have South Africa on their red list? Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable.
Honorable Minister, that honorable member there, if he is not continuously, repeatedly interjecting, now wants to conduct a conversation. Please don't do that. Allow the minister to speak, please.
Thank you very much for your protection, Deputy Speaker. In answer to the follow-up question, in our efforts to build back better and ensure that we are more sustainable and resilient, the tourism sector in South Africa has put in place a number of projects and also worked out how we are going to go ahead with that. Some of these have taught us a number of lessons, and we will use them in future. What we have done now is make sure, as I've indicated in my answer, we put together a war room to expedite the implementation of a sector recovery plan. This is bearing fruit already. We put in place standardized approaches through global cooperation with development and implementation of travel facilitation solutions during the global crisis. We have ensured that our norms and standards for safe operation for the sector are benchmarked against global industry protocols. Whole of government approach we have found has also come in handy and is a great enabler to make sure that the recovery is sustainable. Hence, we have the recovery plan that has been adopted in Cabinet and has been brought here to the Portfolio Committee. It is important to note that no building back better without inclusivity will ever make us more resilient. But we have learned from this, and we will go forward and make sure that whatever we do does take into account that there are issues in life that would set us back as we have been set back by this COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Sheikh Imam, this is your second, this is the second. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Minister, clearly there are all indications that you've made notable achievements. Now, given that the National Department of Health has indicated, and they've become super God, that the fourth wave is anticipated in December, which is the festive season where there is a hype in travel and tourism. How is this going to impact on your success thus far, in having to deal with the issue of tourism affected by COVID-19? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
We have a recovery plan, as I've said, Honorable Member, and this recovery plan does now take us forward, having learned from the disadvantages that we've had, and it is in place. It was brought here, and you were in the meeting, so you would know what we're talking about. We are also making sure that we can promote the need for everybody to be vaccinated wherever we are. We make sure that we have a vaccination site for people to vaccinate. If all of us are vaccinated, if all our visitors are vaccinated, we will be protected against any unfortunate event that might occur. So we've taken into account all the particular matters that need to be taken into account. We're protecting the industry through the plan, and we just ask the House, please, to make sure themselves and their families are vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable De Freitas, it's your turn. Third supplementary question.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Minister talks about how the recovery plan was to protect the industry, but yet the World Travel and Tourism Council indicated that at least 470,000 tourism and travel sector jobs were lost during lockdown, and that contributed to a decline of 181 billion to the economy. Stats SA reports that the overall number of arrival and departures decreased by 71% during lockdown. Now, despite the intentions of this tourism sector recovery plan, what are you doing to remove the greatest barriers to tourism, hospitality, conferencing and entertainment sectors, namely by the ongoing lockdowns and curfews, which continue to be in place and be the biggest impediment to the sector?
Honourable Minister.
When I indicated that we have government support in our recovery plan, I did take into account the question that you're asking. The determination of what we're doing and what level we're at is not a single individual or a single departmental responsibility. It is an all-government responsibility. So we will abide by what Cabinet decides. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mutika asks the last supplementary question on tourism.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Mr. Mafanya, I'll take over from Mr. Mateka.
Okay.
Minister, the tourism sector is on its knees because of COVID. And even before COVID, there was already it was a troublesome sector because of the resistance of transformation. Have you included transformation targets as part of the deal in order to save the ailing industry? If so, what are these targets? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course, transformation is part of any of the entity of the departments that we have. It is essential, it is important, and it has existed. It existed before the uptake of COVID. We are on our back foot like everybody else in tourism, possibly more affected than most people, and those people who are in need of support from government probably more vulnerable than most people. We have put in place a tourism recovery plan that does take into account transformation. We have already had one meeting to ensure that we understand that we are on the same wavelength and are able to put our recovery sector plan forward. We would need to recalibrate the percentages on which we are dealing with transformation, because as you know, as you've indicated by implication, it is the most vulnerable, the lowest that are affected by this. And therefore, we will go back to our drawing board and make sure that we can recalibrate and make sure that all those people who need support are given support, and therefore the percentage will be calculated in line with whatever the outcome of our investigation will be. But we are very conscious of the fact that there needs to be transformation in the sector. There is a panel that is working on this and advising the minister on how to go about the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next question is 243. It's asked by Honorable Matebula to the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure.
Good afternoon, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I'm going to ask to switch off my camera because I've got load shedding at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank Honorable Matebula for the question. In May of 2020, Cabinet approved the Infrastructure Investment Plan. So the Infrastructure Investment Plan identified mechanism to expedite infrastructure implementations in terms of the Infrastructure Development Act of 2014. So ISA was established by the Department of Public Service and Administration in 2020 as a single entry point for all infrastructure processes. The Infrastructure Investment Plan is also aligned to the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, and it's focusing on delivery of catalytic economic and social infrastructure projects and programs. In this regard, ISA is delivering this mandate by, amongst others, facilitating and coordinating strategic infrastructure projects, which are of economic significance and social importance through the Strategic Integrated Project Management Office. ISA is also ensuring that significant private capital is leveraged for long-term investment in public sector infrastructure projects and programs through the Infrastructure Fund. It's also enabling the development of a pipeline of bankable projects and project assurance processes in terms of the SITS methodology. ISA is also facilitating the removal of red tape and resolving blockages as they arise that hinder the rollout of infrastructure projects. And lastly, also ISA is ensuring effective infrastructure planning and implementation through efficient design and execution programs. ISA is part of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure and will therefore be funded by the department's budget. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Matebula.
Thank you, Speaker. My name is Lindy Wemjobo. Ngizomela Honorable Matebula.
Usho ukuthi akekho ku virtual.
She's the whip of the committee, Deputy Speaker.
I know. You think I don't know that? Go ahead. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for your good response. Besides providing the Secretariat service to the Presidential Infrastructure Coordination Committee, how else is Infrastructure SA going to contribute to the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan in terms utilizing the property portfolio and engage in other infrastructure development? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker and Honorable Member, for the question. The contribution of ISA in dealing with property development in our country is the mandate that ISA has received from Cabinet, and that is to sweat our immovable assets, our land and our buildings. And very soon we will be putting to the market some of the buildings for repurposing. We will also be releasing some parcels of land to the market. And that is the mandate to sweat the assets, especially the property assets. But we're also repurposing some of our buildings for student accommodation. And I will be able to provide the honorable member with the full plan of property development for what has happened in the current financial year and what will be happen later in the financial year. Thank you, honorable member.
Thank you. The second supplementary question is by Honorable S.J. Graham.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister DeLille, according to the DBSA website, National Treasury has committed 100 billion rand over a 10-year period to act as seed funding for ESA, with a view to this commitment being a catalyst to generate 1 trillion rand of infrastructure investment. It goes on to state that in 2021, an initial 3-year commitment of 18 billion rand has been made by National Treasury, of which 4 billion rand is committed for the current financial year. Minister, what has been the catalyzing effect of this commitment in terms of additional funding or infrastructure investment? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I must first correct Honorable Graham Murray that the infrastructure fund is housed by DBSA. The 100 billion rand that government has made available for the next 10 years, it's there for us to fund catalytic projects. So far, the infrastructure fund has established an infrastructure investment committee comprising of both the public sector and the private sector. And it's chaired by the minister. We meet once a quarter, and so far we have approved funding for the Vaal River system in the Lesotho Highlands, the Makolo Crocodile River, Olifants Rivier, Umzimvubu, and a number of other projects that we have already approved, and student accommodation from the fund. And the last one that we have approved is on the land of port entries for the Department of Home Affairs. So ISA then assists the project management office where we are short of funding for these government projects. ISA go out and find private sector funding so that we can have a blended fund to complete the projects. And they've been very successful. In June of 2020, ISA also hosted a funding symposium where we were able to raise 304 billion rand towards infrastructure. We had another investment conference on the 6th and the 7th of October 2021. And again, we have received over 300 billion rand of investment. So ISA is playing a catalytic role and a facilitating role to make sure that we mobilize extra resources and that what we fund from the infrastructure fund is just catalytic. Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, the Honorable Siwisa is asking the third supplementary question. Please go ahead, Honorable Siwisa.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. My name is Honorable Komani. I'll be taking the question.
Okay.
Minister, in a speech you made at the NCOP on the 7th of September, you indicated that infrastructure in South Africa is a single entry point to all infrastructure projects in the country. And you also indicated at the core of infrastructure, South Africa's work is close collaboration with the private sector. In even the conceptualization of the project. How will you ensure that there is no conflict of interest in this regard? That the private sector companies you are partnering with do not feed you with ideas that they know will benefit from. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Minister. The Minister has been listening. Don't worry, Honorable Member, take your seat. The Minister is the one who should worry. Honorable Minister, please go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Certainly, we have said it from the beginning that to build infrastructure in our country, to deal with the backlog of infrastructure in our country, that infrastructure investment contributes as the flywheel to our economy to stimulate investment. And therefore, we've gone out to the private sector and we've been very successful at raising that funding. Every contract or any agreement with the private sector, it's not a secret. The projects that they select come from what government has prioritized that need to be built, especially in the water sector. And when we come back to the portfolio committee again, I can bring the honorable member a breakdown of the investment in water infrastructure, in energy infrastructure, road infrastructure, where we've been able to raise funding. We, of course, will structure an agreement with the private sector so that the benefits of the infrastructure leads to job creation in our country. And government will create the conditions conducive for the private sector to help us to create jobs in our country. And that is the approach, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that we follow. And so far it has been successful. We hope in the next financial year that now that we have shown as government that we've got an investment plan, and we have now also augmented the first investment plan, that we can show to the world and to the private sector that we do have projects that need funding for infrastructure. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question here is by Honorable Tring. Honorable Tring.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Minister, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has a number of reporting entities: Agrima SA, Construction Industry Development Board, Council for the Built Environment, Engineering Council of South Africa, and the IDT, Independent Development Trust. Almost all of these entities have some role to play in the infrastructure development, the main one of these entities being IDT. Now that a new entity or structure has been formed in Infrastructure SA, what role, if any, will the entities, including the IDT, have in infrastructure development? And what is the department's future plan for the IDT in terms of infrastructure development? Thank you, Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you to Honorable Tring. Yes, indeed, all the entities are playing a role in the implementation of the infrastructure investment plan. Agreement SA, the Council for the Built Environment, all of them are playing a role. They have clearly defined what contribution they can make in the implementation of the infrastructure investment plan. The Independent Development Trust has got a separate mandate. And as the members of the Portfolio Committee will recall, because we've reported quite oftenly, is that the Independent Development Trust is bankrupt. There's no money. And that Cabinet has agreed that we need to look at the reconfiguration of IDT. We successfully appointed a new board for the IDT in August of 2021. They are now working together with National Treasury, with GTEC, and the Development Bank of Southern Africa to look at options of how we can reconfigure IDT to continue to deliver them on the mandate of social infrastructure. That report will be put before Cabinet before the end of the year or early next year. And thereafter, we will bring the draft proposal of what we propose should happen to IDT and how we can reconfigure IDT also to the Portfolio Committee. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. The next question, 235, is asked by Honourable S.J. Graham to the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. Honourable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Graham for the question.
I know you, Deputy. Go ahead, Minister. I just meant I know you mean Deputy Speaker. That's all I meant.
Okay, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Graham for the question. The department identified approximately 1,300 properties that are illegally occupied. And yes, the department is unable to optimally utilize such properties due to the unlawful occupation. The impact of such unlawful occupation is that the department continues to pay rates and taxes on these properties and is unable to generate any revenue from these properties. However, the department's branch of the Real Estate Management Services, they continue to conduct site inspections and verification of the properties that are reported as illegally occupied. And in addition, they have now appointed an independent service provider that will resume in the contract in January of 2022 to assess every one of the properties and then assist the department to bring eviction orders where necessary. So the contract is supposed to start in January of 2020, but it is very worrying that the amount of government properties that are illegally invaded is actually increasing on a day-to-day basis. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Graham.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Under the Government Immovable Asset Management Act, you are the custodian of DPWI property, and you are directly responsible for ensuring the safeguarding of government's assets, including immovable property. Knoflokskraal in the Teerwaterskloof municipality belongs to your department. Despite the DPWI getting an interdict against unlawful occupation of the property, the number of structures has ballooned from 250 to over 1,500 at last count. A land invasion orchestrated by leaders of the Good Party in that area. This property was earmarked for forestry development that would have provided jobs for members of the local community. Instead, it has become a burgeoning informal settlement with no access to municipal services, further entrenching poverty in the area. Minister, how much has it cost the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to try and safeguard the land at Knoflokskraal against the unlawful occupation led by members of your political party?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I will certainly challenge the Honourable Member to bring evidence and not speak under the protection of parliamentary immunity and make unfounded statements without evidence. That's point number one. Honourable Deputy Speaker, we have already spent about 1.2 million rand to protect the property. It was the Department of DPWI that went to court to seek an interdict to stop any further invasions. We have got two full-time security companies that is continuously monitoring the property there. The honorable member is just passing on gossiping that she got from other people. I can assure you that with the Department of DEF, Minister Barbara Creasy, we have met several times because that land is supposed to be used for forestry. And the Department of DEF has also now partnered with DPWI so that we can pull our resources together and to put a security plan in place until the Department of DEF can decide when they are going to start the plantation operations. I will advise the honorable member to go look at the master plan on forestry released by Minister Barbara Creasy last year in November, and you will see all the plans that we have to deal with not only that piece of land, but many other pieces of land that's being allocated to DEF for the purposes of forestry. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary is asked by Honorable Njobo. Honorable Njobo.
Thank you, Speaker.
Deputy.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and the minister. What is the action? What action has the department taken to remedy the situation that such illegal occupation does not happen in future? And what is the department intending to do with these properties after illegal occupants are removed? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. It's a very important question asked by Honorable Njobo as to once we have been able to secure an eviction, what do we do with the land afterwards? Because if we get the eviction and we're successful, the chances that the land will be re-invaded, it is there. What we do in circumstances like this is that we look at what the land has been zoned for. We will then approach either the local municipalities or the local metropolitans or the provincial government to say that there is this piece of land in your province that is zoned for X. Are you interested in taking over that land? So that is what we do with every piece of land to make sure that if we are successful with an eviction order, we will be able, to keep the land empty so that it could be used for government purposes. In terms of the action, like I've said, we've got an independent service provider that will be working with, that will be responsible for three functions. First of all, the service provider will have to look at how to regularize the leases to ensure revenue is being generated. They also need to conduct forensic investigations for properties that have been illegally transferred, as well as confirmation of debt owed to the department as a result of the illegal occupation, and evictions where such processes are due. So we hope, Honourable Member, that with the help from this independent service provider, for the rest of the financial year and next year, we'll be able to tackle most of these illegal invasions. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Siwisa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. My name is Mr. Langa. I'll be taking the question for Honorable Siwisa. Minister, we hear you and note your response. However, we are not getting specifics in your response. In other words, it will help if you were to categorize the status of these so-called unlawful occupiers of the public works property. We would like to know the extent to which these properties have been hijacked and occupied by the commercial entities, and the extent to which they are occupied by poor and homeless people. And would you kindly give assurance here that your department will not be evicting poor people and homeless people who are occupying these state properties? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. My apologies, my mic was off. I will give a quick breakdown. In Bloemfontein, we have got 40. In Cape Town, 134. In Durban, 540. In Johannesburg, 109. In Kimberley, 68. And Mobatu, 170. Umtata, 23. Nelspruit, 110. Polokwane, 32. And Port Elizabeth, 101. And in Pretoria, 56. At this stage, I can only provide the numbers, but who is occupying the land, whether it's a commercial entity or whether it is invaded for human settlement purposes. That information we are busy collating now to see who is on the land and whether that land is fit, for instance, for human settlement purposes. I can assure the Honourable Member is that when the communities have been on that piece of land for a long time, we can speak to the municipality to take over the land and then provide services to the communities, or they can formalize the informal structures that are there. That eviction will be really, before you get to eviction, we have to engage with other spheres of government to look, for instance, at alternative accommodation. And I want to give the assurance to the Honourable Members that that's exactly what we will do. We will not just evict people for the sake of eviction. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Zat Majosi.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Minister, what is your department carry out regular audits of the properties which it controls? And if so, in what intervals per annum?
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Yes, we do inspections as the department, although I would like to see it to be done more regularly. And we have got the immovable asset register that we now finally have been able to receive an unqualified audit from the Auditor General. But I will have to go and get the exact amount of inspections that the department do, and when do they do it, and how do they decide to do it. Because when it comes to, especially with the maintenance of any asset, you need to have a specific schedule for maintenance, and you need to deal with reactive maintenance. And that schedule I can certainly provide to the Honourable Member Josie. And Josie, I don't have it with me, but I will provide it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Question number 213 has been asked by the Honourable
Seimauta to the Minister of Public Enterprise. The Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and thank you very much. Firstly, let me clarify that all of the issues raised by Ms. Mautwe are connected to the issue of climate change, as I elaborated in respect of an earlier question. Secondly, that over a long period of time, Cabinet and the President's Climate Commission and other bodies within government have been looking at the question of the nationally determined contribution to reducing carbon emissions in South Africa. Thirdly, as I said earlier on, that electricity is a major contributor to carbon emissions to the tune of about 41% of overall emissions that we actually have. And that the transition that we speak of within the climate change process, but in particular in respect of the electricity sector, could be a transition from coal to nuclear, for example, or coal to hydro, or coal to solar. And there are many variations to that theme, including battery storage, which is likely to play an important part. All of these discussions at COP26, including the position that we've taken in relation to financing the transition by developed countries, has been discussed in Cabinet and has the approval of Cabinet as well. And this was over a long period of time when discussions with various funders took place, both by Eskom itself and later by a group of ministers led by Minister Creasy. And Cabinet then approved the outcome. And as I said earlier on, Chairperson, this is not a deal yet, this is an offer, and negotiations still need to be pursued in this particular regard. What are we asking funding for at this point in time? It's the Just Energy Transition Project at Komati Power Station. It's the research and other work that needs to be done in relation to green hydrogen and the production of electric vehicles in South Africa. So clearly what we are saying is that this money is not to be used for Eskom's operations or indeed for Eskom debt as well. And obviously there's a concern that once the money is, inverted commas, provided, if the terms are appropriate and acceptable to South Africa, then appropriate measures need to be taken to ensure the safeguarding of this money, its proper spending, its proper auditing, and that the money is used for the purposes that have in fact been identified. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Seimauta.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Minister, your counterpart in the Ministry of Minerals and Energy has correctly rubbished those plans to dramatically move from coal. Now, what is the government position when it comes to that? Was he only speaking for the sake of speaking, or was he speaking as a minister of this country? But also, what will then be the impact of that on Eskom if we were to move away from coal? And lastly, Minister, there is no free lunch, so they are offering South Africa. So what's in it for them? What relationship are we having with them? What are we entering onto? Because there is no free lunch. Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Honorable Chairperson, I agree there's no free lunch, nor are we as government in the business of providing free lunches to anyone. And this will be a strictly commercial exercise, which must fit in with our fiscal plans and our fiscal capabilities at the end of the day. What will be the impact on Eskom? Well, with or without this funding, we'll have to find a way as South Africans to decarbonize our economy, to give concrete impact and meaning to the commitments that we've made to be part of the decarbonization process and part of the process of climate change that needs to take place in order not to protect the South Africans, but to protect humanity as a whole. So the impact on Eskom will be, firstly, that it must prepare a plan, which it has at a pilot level at Komati Power Station, as I indicated. Secondly, it will have to find other resources that will produce electricity. I mentioned some of them earlier on. And thirdly, it will have to do some creative funding structuring in order to be able to use all the capital that might be available in South Africa. And as far as comments coming from other ministers is concerned, well, I think you must ask the other ministers what they mean, but we are not talking about a dramatic switch where every mining activity ends tomorrow and the use of coal ends tomorrow. The use of coal will continue in line with IRP 19, certainly for those in inverted commas younger power stations, and there'll be a declining curve in that particular regard. So clarity on that question is absolutely important, as outlined in IRP 19. And secondly, we've got to ensure that as part of the just energy transition process, workers, coal mine owners, and communities are looked after and are no worse off as a result of the changes that are happening in the world. If we don't make the changes, we are going to be the takers of policy processes in other parts of the world, including extra trade tariffs on our exports to those parts of the world that have already decided their policy stance on some of these matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Jay Shabalala.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The person who will do the supplementary is Madam Sipiri. Thank you.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo ke tsa Michelle Molo go tla petition tate Pravin Gordhan ke boye ke botšiše follow up question ya ka ka gore molo go tla petition considering that the SOEs in South Africa often cite underfunding as a key reason to poor performance, coupled with the fact that most domestic investors are uncertain about investing in the SOEs. What will be the benefit of the investment in the transition from coal to renewable energies insofar as Eskom's challenges to stabilize power supply and sustain operational performance are concerned?
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Minister.
Honourable Piri and Chairperson.
Go ahead, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chairperson. Can I continue?
Yes, go ahead, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Along the way, the voice of Honourable Piri seemed to fade off, but let me answer what I thought I understood. The impact on domestic investors will in fact be a positive impact. There's quite a pipeline running into billions of rands for investment in renewable energy, battery storage, and accompanying infrastructure that is waiting for the right regulatory framework. Secondly, that framework was provided a few days ago by NERSA, and it has been received, I believe, very positively by different sectors of the economy. And in fact, we will then get more investment into the economy as a consequence of committing ourselves to the transition, but also giving certainty as to the path that we intend to follow, including ensuring, as I said, that this transition is a just one. There will be, according to industry analysts, more jobs created. There will be more retraining of workers, existing workers, and new young workers who are going to enter the energy field as well. And there would be additional industrialization as we move in this direction, particularly in places like Mpumalanga, where many of our power stations are located. So this will, of course, be complemented by work in relation to green hydrogen, the electric vehicles, and other sectors of the economy that have also got to undertake a decarbonization exercise. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Kachalia.
Thank you, Chairperson. Is the Right Honourable Minister able to provide clarity on the potential recipients of the partnerships or firms that will avail themselves of the US, UK, EU, and UN opportunities? And can we confirm, importantly, that the President's brother-in-law is a significant potential recipient of this largesse? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, as I've indicated now 2 or 3 times during the course of the afternoon, this is not a done deal. This is an offer from certain developed countries to foot the bill to some extent, not in its entirety, for the just energy transition process to begin to take off, both at Eskom and in respect of green hydrogen and electric vehicles. Secondly, this amount of money still needs to be negotiated in terms of the various terms. And I outlined earlier whether it's grant money, whether it's concessional money. What does concessional mean? Does it mean that there's a payment holiday? Does it mean lower interest rates? What does it mean in terms of carrying foreign currency risks? So those are all matters that a technical team best suited for those calculations and negotiations will be actually undertaking. And then as far as brothers-in-law and other family members are concerned, there's nothing on the table at the moment for anybody to be connected with or to have any role or participation. And the issue of which firms will be involved is something that will be determined as we go forward in a very transparent and open way, which is a commitment we can certainly give as government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mbutelezi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. It's Honorable Machos that will be taking over the question. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Minister, what is the overall energy policy for usage multiple sources of renewable energy, and how will Eskom manage some, if not all, of these different sources? Whether Eskom is adequately geared or is undergoing transformation to sufficiently deal with generation and its sustainability? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Majosi, the overall policy of government at this point in time is framed in the integrated resource plan, which embraces the kind of energy direction that we intend to go in, and the phasing that will happen in respect of the different sources of energy and the kind of commitments that are required of government and others as well. Secondly, is Eskom adequately prepared? Well, as we stand today, Eskom produces energy from coal. It receives hydro energy from Cahora Bassa. It is linked to the Southern African Power Pool. It also has power coming from Koeberg, which is nuclear. It, during peak hours, if there's load shedding, uses diesel and diesel turbines based in the Southern and Western Cape as well. And there are new opportunities available, as RP19 indicates, for gas and for nuclear in particular, but other sources of energy as well. So there's also already a diversity of skills within Eskom to manage these processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question number 247 has been asked by the Honorable Lubengo to the Minister of Small Business Development. Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. First, I would like to talk to the mandate of the Department of Small Business Development, which is to lead and coordinate an integrated approach towards promotion and development of entrepreneurship, small businesses, and cooperatives. Now, if you look at this broad mandate, it therefore tells you that we are left with no choice, as the National Development Plan indicates, that we have to make sure that we leverage on the entrepreneurs in order to transform and grow the economy, with the emphasis on the vulnerable groups, being your people with disabilities, women, and youth. Now, in response to COVID-19, the department deliberately established a fund that is known as Township and Rural Entrepreneurship Program, which has a myriad of relief packages that are meant to support small enterprises in these disadvantaged areas. Of course, the second component, Chairperson, on cannabis, as the department, before we introduce any intervention, the first thing to do is to make sure that there's a sector-responsive strategy, and in this context, the department developed it, and we are now working with the Eastern Cape Province in partnership with the Eastern Cape Rural Development Agency, wherein we signed an MOU that is going to come into effect in the financial year of 2022 and 2023, where we are now putting the priorities in relation to supporting small businesses, especially in the rural areas that are involved in the business of cannabis. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Lubengo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, you reply in your reply you mentioned the work in progress to support emerging Hey. In your reply, you mentioned the work in progress to support emerging business people in the sectors that I have mentioned in my question. I mean sectors cannabis, renewable energy, and organic farming. Considering the persistent challenge of funding for entrepreneurs, particularly Black people, women and the youth, what further measures is your department planning to implement in order to source more funding, particularly from the finance sector? And how is the department encouraging investors in the sector to support emerging companies? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Honourable Member, the first thing that we are doing in the department is to recognize that we are operating in an ecosystem, and therefore, as the department, we are not going to be able to provide funding to all. This is why we are having engagements with all the critical stakeholders, both in the public sector and the private sector, including the banks. We will be signing up many memorandums of understanding, wherein we are saying we've got to work together, bring all the FDIs, as we work also with Minister Patel, to make sure that the support that is needed by our small enterprises is support that is coordinated, but most importantly, an effective support. We have not been tracing or making follow-up on some of the entities that we have funded, which is why we said it is high time that we provide that post-monitoring support to the small businesses in order to make sure that we can even track and trace the impact that we are making in the economy. As I said, the National Development Plan compels us to transform and grow the economy through the support that should be provided to entrepreneurs. We are partnering again with the World Bank. We are partnering with the AU, saying let's come together, everybody that has sources of funding, to an extent that as I'm talking to you, we are going to be hosting a partnership dialogue with big banks and big businesses
to talk about opportunities, including leveraging on the existing enterprise supply development that is with the other big companies and in certain state-owned entities. In this context, we will be establishing a fund of funds that seeks to bring all these funds together to say, let's make sure that we work together to collaborate for effective execution in support of entrepreneurs. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honourable B. Matulela.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greeting to our greatest national advisor, our Commander-in-Chief, and all the weaponry of the EFF battalions. Minister Ndabeni.
Honourable members.
The people of Emampondweni, not broadly Eastern Cape, Emampondweni around Port St. John's, Lusikisiki, and Flagstaff have a long history of involvement in the Dakar economy on which they have depended to put food on the table and send their children to schools with gradual easing of the restrictions of cannabis. What measures have you put in place, order, to ensure that big multinational companies do not displace small Dakar producers in Pondoland, other than going to some biggest businessmen and negotiation? We're speaking about small businesses here. There's no need for that.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Umhlonishwa uphazamisa nje into encinci ukuthi ukuze zikhule osomashishini abancinci badinga osomashishini abakhulu. That is why earlier I made reference to an ecosystem that we are operating in, because we're not a standalone organization. The small businesses complement the work that is being done by the big businesses. Therefore, we have to coexist. It becomes very important for opportunities that should be presented to them. Now, coming to Emampondweni on the issue of Inzangu. You are correct, ukuthi Inzangu isukela bokulunywa ngabantu basemampondweni. But as government, we have adopted an approach, the district development approach, the district development model, which forces us to join hands with other state institutions at provincial level and local level. Therefore, Mhlonishwa mangisithi kuwe sine partnership ne development agency as Cape, it's because we have to make sure that there's integrated planning, and therefore the support that we provide from national ayo support efike iwenje ngongathi yimvula ehlemthini. It is important once more to say we are engaging, including the Department of Health, in ensuring that in the process of ensuring that people are given licenses, those people from Emampondweni are not excluded. And this is the support that we're looking at. That's not only looking or targeting financial support, but also the non-financial support, which is something we are committed to do. Mhlonishwa, nawe singalibulela ithuba lento kuba ungancedisa in ensuring that abantu basemampondweni, indeed, where you can, as the lawmaker, you ease the environment, because there's so many red tapes that require this House's intervention. Therefore, we welcome your contribution. When that time comes, we are reviewing the legislation. Thank you, Slan.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Hendricks. Honourable Hendricks. Where is Honourable Hendricks? Siyadlula. I'm going to the last supplementary question. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Lutuli. Honourable Lutuli.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Minister, in light of the burden faced by the small businesses from the effects of the pandemic and worsened by the recent riots, especially in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, are you intend to boost the entrepreneurial resilience of the small business in order to prepare them for the similar event in future? If not, why not? If so, what are the relevant details? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
Ngiyabonga kwiNkosi uLuthuli. Firstly, as the department, we are implementing a number of schemes that are meant to empower the small businesses and the cooperatives that we have. That's the first thing, whether there's riots or not, because July incident was just a wake-up call to say, if we are not investing much on the development side of the businesses, therefore we stand to lose a lot because small businesses will fail. In this instance, we are engaging with insurance companies and urging small businesses to make sure that they do pay for insurances so that when these incidents happen, they can be able to get the support that they can get. We are also looking at extending the informal development program support as a permanent program to support informal businesses going forward. As much as we encourage all to join insurance, but there are our mothers who are just hawkers and other informal businesses. And we are saying there's the department, we're going to make sure that we provide permanent support whilst we encourage their growth, because we don't want them to remain hawkers. It's important that they really temper with the economy by becoming above fruit and veg and others. In this context, Patishwa, sorry, Mhlonitshwa Inkosi uLuthuli. Siye saba nemingenelela kwisehlo saKwaZulu-Natal neseGauteng sakhupha izimali ezipha kumyinge we-250 million eseprocesswayo njengoba ndithetha nawe nje. Ndiza kuyinikeza ke imininingwane ngoba ndibonile into yoba kunombuzo ofuna ndinike ncaka sana into yokuba ngaba sikhuphe malini kweliphi iphondo. Ndiyabulela mhlali ngaphambili.
Siyabonga Ngoshe. Question number 254 has been asked by the Honorable Mboyane to the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you. I want to highlight 9 measures in place to drive localization, build and upgrade domestic production to supply both South Africa and foreign markets, support wider economic development and promote employment growth. First, social pacts at national and sector level. Business, labor, government and communities have agreed to localize 200 billion rands worth of goods over the next 5 years. At sector level, we now have 6 master plans in place covering 700,000 workers with industry commitments in each area. For example, the Auto Master Plan commitment by Toyota to invest locally has resulted in the new Corolla Cross vehicle being made here in South Africa, starting last month. We estimate that about 4 billion rands worth of local value add will be injected every year into the economy, and more than 1,000 jobs have been created in the company and its suppliers. Secondly, competitiveness and enterprise support packages. They're in a number of sectors: filmmaking, clothing and textiles, autos, and global business services like call centers. The DTIC's incentive for global business centers have resulted in 47,000 jobs being created locally since 2018. Third, preferential procurement by the state and public enterprises, where departments and entities buy goods from local manufacturers. For example, the Army's uniforms and boots are required to be made locally. Fourth, trade measures, either increasing measures on imported goods like poultry or decreasing tariffs to zero on input materials like textile fabrics. The poultry interventions ensure that 1 million additional chickens are produced a week in South Africa, coupled with a commitment to increase investments and efficiency, re-engaging in exports, encouraging greater participation by black farmers, and moderating price increases. Fifth, tax benefits for businesses to expand their capital spending, like the Section 12I incentive that was in place until March this year, or benefits in special economic zones. One of the benefits, for example, provided an international investor.
Minister. Just a second.
House Chair, can I address you? Yes, thank you. Based on what Honorable Kaula just uttered on virtual platform, that Minister Unamanga, she says Minister is lying. She must withdraw that.
I couldn't hear her, but we'll make a follow-up on that and deal with it. Okay. Honorable Kaula. Makaula. Ngicela ukubuza ukuthi ukushilo yini lokho na?
Ngikushilo kodwa ngiyaxolisa.
Ngiyabonga mama. Kodwa akungenzeki futhi lokho next time. Please. Sorry about that, Honorable Minister, can continue.
Honorable Kaula, if there is progress, you should celebrate it, not deny it. One of the benefits we had is an edible oil refinery will be built in Richards Bay by an international investor with 20% more local value add to its palm oil imports, creating local jobs and saving foreign exchange. The 6 areas industrial funding by the IDC and the NEF that has supported many thousands of jobs for young South Africans. The 7th area is a commitment made by companies in mergers through the Competition Act. An example is Coca-Cola localizing supply chain and setting up a fund to support procuring technical experts that can help to improve competitiveness at companies. The 8th area is investment promotion, which result in commitments at the investment conferences. One of those commitments resulted in South Africa having the ability now to produce the Johnson & Johnson vaccine here in South Africa, the first and thus far the only production capability on the African continent. And finally, expansion of markets through trade agreements like the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which provides greater scale for local industries and firms to leverage. The Intra-Africa Trade Fair hosted in Durban provides a platform for South Africa and other African countries to showcase locally made products. Many African countries have been putting local industrialization policies in place to deepen Africa's industrial footprint. Those are 9 examples of practically what we're doing to drive localization. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable S.H. Mboyane.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Minister, the July unrest had a negative impact on local industries and the localization program. It also caused damage to small and medium-sized business. What measures did the department put in place to support the local industries and businesses? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member. Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. First, the department has put in place a support program delivered through the IDC and the NEF. I'm pleased to inform the House that 2.5 billion rand of approvals has now been made. This covers more than 380 different business sites, and those businesses employ more than 18,000 workers here in South Africa. So this is an example of helping businesses to rebuild. Some of that is in the form of grants, others are in the form of support, bridging, funding until the insurance payments are made, and in other instances there are industrial loans. Some examples that has been in the media where we've seen factories burning and being looted, those places now being rebuilt, and there are some really good stories showing the spirit of entrepreneurs getting their businesses back on track. And those are the examples of backing the localization effort, making sure that we have industrial capability in South Africa so that we can provide goods and services, create jobs here, expand our tax base, and promote development. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Minister, I like your idea of localization and the emphasis you're placing on local manufacturing. However, Minister, the problem that we have is that in order for us to be competitive, the cost of doing business or production has got to be low. Now, with your high labor cost in the country, the unreliable electricity or energy supply in the country is going to impact on the cost of these products. All that is going to happen is that people will have to buy them, because we're encouraging them to buy local at a higher price. They will have less money to spend at home for food and other essentials, which means the level of poverty will increase. It's not really going to create an environment that you're going to create jobs and boost economic growth unless we deal with the issue of cost of production, which is labor cost, stringent labor conditions, the energy supply, and we need to deal with this holistically. What is your plan to address this with the different role players so we can keep production costs low, we can be competitive and export as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. So first, thank you very much for supporting the localization effort and idea. That's really important. And you point correctly to the need to contain costs, because that's a key driver of making it possible to get a greater slice of the market. So what we're doing there is we're addressing that through a competitiveness support program. If you take the clothing industry as an example, Honourable Imam Sheikh, we are not simply seeking to address the matter by administrative fiat. We're doing the following things. We're helping businesses to upgrade their technology and their machinery, to skill their workforce, and in a number of instances, we've addressed some of the input cost challenges. One example that I can cite is the decision to reduce the duty on certain imported textiles to enable local clothing manufacturing costs to be brought down. Of course, one of the fundamental issues that we have to address is both the cost and the availability of energy, and Minister Gordon has spoken to this thing earlier in the session of parliamentary questions and answers. And finally, I want to point to the labor dimension. Honourable Imam Sheikh, I know you will agree with us that South African workers need decent work. And that means that we've got to upgrade skill, enable productivity levels to rise, and at the same time ensure that decent wages are paid. It's to try to square those many things that constitute the overall thrust of industrial policy, and sector by sector, we do it. In the case of the auto industry, as an example, many of the plants have become world-class manufacturing hubs through an investment of training of workers. So some of these issues require that detailed thing. That's called the master plan. We have 6 of these master plans in place, and they set out in some detail the steps that business must take, trade unions must take, and government must take to build a partnership for jobs and for development. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The Honourable MJ Cuthbert.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Minister, yesterday the Centre for Enterprise Development released a comprehensive report assessing the viability of your localization policy entitled The Siren Song of Localization, which concluded that perhaps the most important thing to say about the localization policy is that South Africa's poor performance over the last 13 years has nothing to do with any supposed overpropensity to import, and everything to do with a range of self-inflicted policy and governance injuries. This is not the first time that your policy has been slated by analysts and the opposition. Both have questioned the impact of your decision on our participation in the African Continental Free Trade Area, as well as our international trade law obligations under the World Trade Organization. Does your decision to completely ignore these facts imply that you do not follow an evidence-based policy-making approach? I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Cuthbert, but be careful of your finger.
Thank you,
Honourable Minister.
I would encourage Honourable Cuthbert to point that finger to local products and say those are the local products that we should be buying. Honourable Cuthbert, just a few specific points. The first one is the CDE, of course, has taken a particular ideological approach to economic policy in South Africa, and that is well known. They are entitled to put those views across. As government, we disagree with them. We know millions and millions of South Africans disagree. As regard the African Continental Free Trade Area, Honourable Cuthbert, you'd be delighted to know, and I have conveyed this to you in a portfolio committee, that I recently met with one of South Africa's very large retail chain CEOs. And we were talking about the localization program. And he said to me, you know, Minister, I should tell you that I meet presidents and trade ministers whenever I travel through the African continent. We've got stores in many different countries, and all of them are raising exactly the same issue: how to deepen localization of manufactured products and agricultural products in different African countries. Instead of seeing this as being contrary to the AFCFTA, Honourable Cuthbert, I would encourage you, make the leap to understand that this massive continental free trade area is to enable African manufacturers producing goods made in Africa and enabling us to shift away from the reliance on goods made in Asia, in Europe, and in the Americas. Africa's curse has been that Africa consumes what it does not produce, and it produces what it does not consume. Africa has 17% of the world's population, Honourable Cuthbert, but only 3% of the world's GDP and less than 1% of the world's steel and car making. We must change this. The local industrialization program of this government and of many other African governments is the way to go. I was yesterday in Durban and the day before listening to heads of state from Nigeria, from a number of other countries, Rwanda, from South Africa, our own president speaking, and all of them emphasize the importance of industrialization. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Yako.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, we all know that we're sitting with the mess that is Eskom right now and the subsequent load shedding that we've been receiving. You mentioned the clothing and auto industries, but you didn't quite capture me. What has been the impact of the loss of energy supply in the manufacturing industry? And also, what is likely the impact going forward on the continuous energy supply situation, because it looks like it's going to continue. But please be quite specific for me. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Honourable Yako, I can be very specific. Energy shortages, disruption to energy supply, and high cost of energy is damaging to our manufacturing sector. That is a belief of the DTIC, it's the belief of Minister Gordon, it's the belief of Minister Mantashe. The whole of Cabinet agrees on that. The question now is how to navigate from many years of state capture at Eskom that has weakened the institution, that has resulted in a hollowing out of technical capability and has ensured that its cost structure and the maintenance of its plants have fallen well behind what this economy requires. Part of the answer is in bringing renewable energy as quickly on stream as is possible, and that can be done within a relatively short period if we open up the opportunities for entrepreneurs to come in. In addition to that, we must grapple with the challenge of base load, because while solar and wind energy is very important, you also need that constant energy source, and that's a further area. Looking long term, and this won't give an answer immediately, we are seeking to invest in the technologies underpinning the green hydrogen economy, because South Africa has got ample sun and wind that would be able to provide the renewable energy for the manufacture of green hydrogen. But also, we are a key mining economy, producing platinum group metals that are used as a catalyzer in green hydrogen energy generation. For all those reasons, our energy plan that Minister Mantashe and Minister Gordon will put forward, the plan, the other one, the work of Eskom, must address this. So for me, there's no question about it. Energy is critical to the success of our industrialization program. And you rightly point to that as an area that we need to put a lot of effort in, as we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question number 252 has been asked by the Honorable Idlamini, the Minister of Public Affairs. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. And my apologies, there's quite a storm here in Swane. I hope I don't get disconnected. But Honorable Dlamini, thank you for your question. The expansion at the Port of Durban will be delivered through the Transnet National Ports Authority. And the expansion of the port will see the Port of Durban becoming a flagship project for Sub-Saharan Africa. And as you know, Durban was one of the busiest and biggest ports in the Southern Hemisphere for quite a while, but has lost that status more recently. Transnet continues to service its current debt as it reaches maturity in line with the agreements in place with lenders. And Transnet's funding strategy involves the raising of funding from the debt capital markets to ensure delivery on its mandate. The significant investment required for projects incorporated in the port's master plan requires a partnership model to leverage more funding from the private sector, and therefore funding for the expansion of the port will not have a negative impact on the fiscus and will contribute to economic growth. So let me reinforce 6 points. The first is that investment in ports and logistics more generally is absolutely crucial to the growth of the South African economy and to reduce the cost of doing business in South Africa. Secondly, we must recognize the entire value system or the entire logistics system, from customer to rail to terminals to ports to ships, and the importing and exporting community, so that we are looking after the interests of everyone concerned and there's efficiency in the operation of the system. Third, as I indicated already, there will be no fiscal dependence as a result of these plans. And then fourth, partnerships, as I've also indicated, are key to this process. Whether it's partnerships in relation to funding, co-investing, granting concessions, or co-shareholding. And we will see what the right model is as we go forward in the implementation of the plan. Fifth, as a test, Transnet issued 2 requests for information in the recent months to test the market sentiment and market interest. And they've had an extremely good response, both from within South Africa and internationally as well. So our place, if you like, in the global logistics system is reasonably well grounded, but it needs to be strengthened. And lastly, all of this, once it gets to the implementation stage, will create new opportunities for Black business and professionals as well. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Dlamini.
Thanks, Chair. Honorable Minister, the plans for the expansion of the Port of Durban, are they still the same as those envisaged in Vision 2030, or they've been altered a bit, noting that there have been environmental issues around the use of the old airport? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
I don't have the detail in front of me, but if Vision 2030 was developed by the state capturers, then it would no longer apply in its entirety. As you know, Transnet was also a victim of state capture, and the same individuals or similar individuals were involved in Eskom as well. And secondly, the port's master plan, which has been worked on collaboratively with local government, provincial government, other national departments, and Transnet itself, is the framework within which we are Transnet will be operating. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable O. Clark.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can the Minister take the House into his confidence and share with us the time frame against the deployment of the 100 billion in which the Port of Durban will be expected to be elevated from the unenviable position of 248 at 351 in respect of container handling to reach the 2015 figure where over 80 million tonnes of cargo was handled annually? I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
Certainly, Chairperson, there's no harm in taking the Honourable Member into confidence, but she's been using different units at different stages in the question. But let me say the following. Firstly, there's an overall plan for a 100 billion rand investment in the Durban port. Secondly, some of that investment is in relation to port development, and some of that is in relation to other facilities being developed as well. So some stretch over 5 years, others stretch over 10 years as this process begins to get on the way. And the Transnet National Ports Authority, as far as the port infrastructure is concerned, will take responsibility for the port infrastructure development, whilst at the same time there's improvements in the productivity of terminals on the one hand, and also in relation to Transnet rail facilities and the freight infrastructure that services the Port of Durban as well. And within this sort of framework, as Honorable Dami was asking, Chairperson, the role of the inverted commas old airport will take on a slightly different shape from what we know and are familiar with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Rokomane Subakaksahau.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, having announced in July this year, in August this year, that the expansion of Durban Port will require private partners in order to raise the 100 billion required for the super terminal. To date, have you sourced those private partners? If so, what is the nature of the agreement between those partners and Transnet? And would this eventually lead to the privatization of the Durban port? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
No, on the Chairperson and Honourable Member, it will not lead to the privatization of the Durban port. And in my initial answer, I said that the partnership with the private sector, both from within South Africa and globally, will take different forms. It could be the provision of funding. It could be the co-investing in a particular project. It could be the concessioning of particular, for example, railway lines. And it could mean co-shareholding between Transnet and the new entity, be it South African or overseas as well. Secondly, nothing has moved in this particular regard. All the preparatory work is currently being done, and careful project management will be undertaken in order to make sure that there is transparency in the process, and that everybody, both particularly South African businesses, I indicated earlier, will have adequate opportunity to partner or cooperate with Transnet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The Honourable Buthelezi will ask the last supplementary question. Baba Shanga.
Honourable Chairperson, it's Singh here.
Go ahead,
I believe he may have a connectivity problem. The question that he would like to ask the Minister is the following. In Transnet's annual financial statements for 2021, there was a great increase in impairments of non-financial assets for the year under review. This was apparently due to the suspension of the 1064 regional equipment manufacturer contracts, which has resulted in vandalized locomotives not being able to be repaired. Minister, what reasons were provided to you as to why the suspension of these OEM contracts hindered the repairs to locomotives? And also, if you could tell us about the locomotive that's lying overseas for about 7 years now. What's going to happen to that? Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Member. The Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, thank you very much. And to the Honourable Singh, who's got a new title now, Shenge. So he'll have to make some changes. The answer is a very well-known one in South Africa, Honourable Singh, and that is that you had a series of collaborations between certain Gupta-related people and people within Transnet that cooked up the 1064 deal, so to speak. Secondly, ensured that illegitimate fees or commissions were paid based in Hong Kong. Thirdly, there's a contestation in terms of the delivery of the locomotives. While some firms have actually delivered their quota, for example, one of them has delivered 220 odd locomotives. Others have varied levels of delivery on the locomotives. Fourthly, because there is now a dispute about the so-called commission, and how Transnet can lay its hands on a few billion rands, there was an inability or refusal by some of the OEMs to ensure that spares were provided for the locomotives that had already made their way into the country. First, that problem has now been overcome to some extent. And sixth, the reason that we still don't have a completed project, inverted commas, in this particular regard is that there's legal contestation around what was essentially a corrupt process from within Transnet itself. But it is hoped that between our government and the government of the firms that have been involved, we can find an amicable solution which enables this process to be concluded, and we now move ahead from where we used to be. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That was the last supplementary question in this category. Question number 237 has been asked by the Honourable T.V. Mapeno to the Minister of Transport. Honourable Minister.
Yes, thank you, Honourable House Chair and Honourable Mapena. The online booking system that was initially introduced in Gauteng, currently managed by RTMC on behalf of Gauteng, has provided a good basis for the RTMC to introduce a bouquet of online services across the country. From this experience, provinces such as Gauteng have decided to expand its DLTC footprint, in addition to declaring 2 DLTCs operated by the RTMC. The Gauteng MEC, Mr. Jacob Mamabulu, has also delegated Gautrain to render DLTC functions. In terms of the provisions of Section 18 of the RTMC Act, out of the 10 functional areas, driving licenses is of its competencies. However, the power vests with the MECs in the provinces to open DLTCs or delegate municipalities or other agencies to render these services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable B. Mapena.
Yeah, thank you very much. The Minister, you're saying that the MECs and the municipalities are the ones that have discretion in terms of expansion. But given the fact that when we had a backlog, the National Department of Transport through RTMC is the one that had an intervention in place. The reason why I'm asking this is because in Orange Farm, you still don't have any DLTC services. In Soweto, you have a situation where the Maponya one is, there's too many queues there. The one that is in Kliptown is not working. And you also have a situation, well, I live there. You must stop interrupting when people are talking.
Honorable member, please continue. Order,
also the case
honorable
with
members.
Alexandra.
Order, please.
Thank you very much. You must stop being
Honorable Minister, honorable member, please stop that. Honorable Minister.
I didn't hear the question of Honorable Mabena because he was being interrupted. If he can repeat it briefly through your permission, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Mabena, go ahead.
No, thank you very much. You are saying that the discretion is on the MECs and the municipalities to expand the DLTC services. I am saying, because of the backlog that we experience in Gauteng and the frustration that motorists in the main were experiencing, the National Department of Transport had an intervention. And through that intervention, using obviously the entity which is RTMC, you managed to open the 3 satellite services, Waterfall Park, Eco Park, Centurion, and Kudu Sport. But I'm saying, in Soweto, we have a challenge. One, there is no a DLTC services which are functional. The one in Maponya Mall is problematic. The one in Kliptown is not working. In Orange Farm as a whole, there's no DLTC services whatsoever. You can also do the same thing in Alexandra. I am saying, why can't you, through this program with RTMC, do exactly the same thing, open a DLTC services in Orange Farm for the people there, and most of those people are voters, by the way. And also the same thing in Soweto, and also assist the people in Orange Farm. Thank you very much. You see, again, you're interrupting me. Stop the sentence.
Honorable Mapena, please.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Mapena. The model we are implementing now, which is quite efficient, among others, to address the backlog in terms of driver's license. And as you will know that we also extended to March 2022. It is a model that we wanted to replicate in all the provinces, not only in Gauteng. It is efficient, it is real service delivery. And if you have been to these places, you will see what I'm talking about. We are working with MEC Mamabulu to expand DLTCs across Gauteng and as well as other provinces. So those areas, Soweto, Orange Farm, you are mentioning, will also be incorporated. You are right that we do face challenges in those particular areas. And the model we are implementing now is quite efficient, prudent, and modern and quite efficient. To get the driver's license shouldn't be a headache or to renew. And we'll be able to meet the deadline in terms of the backlog by March 2022. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question is asked by the Honorable H. Bilankulu.
Sebenza Mbalula.
House Chair.
Honorable member. Please don't do that again. Honorable Chabalala.
Yes, thank you so much, House Chair. I'll take the question on behalf of Bilankulu. Minister, in the previous few months, there were huge backlogs in the bookings for license renewals. Can the Minister provide us with an update on the status of this backlog and steps taken to eradicate the backlog, as much as Minister would have elaborated working with other MECs? What are other provinces perhaps to have plans to ensure that they do the same, as much as Gauteng is doing that to eradicate this backlog? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
I will not be in a position to give you a breakdown province by province in terms of addressing the backlog, but I can tell you that we will be able to meet the deadline by March, that nobody will be having challenges of driver's license renewal. And then part of the bouquet of what we have adopted and we introduced to the public and also to the portfolio committee was to say that we are going online. In the next coming weeks, watch the space, we will be launching that online and renewed, revamped online approach as part of the bouquet. And we are going into spaces where you can get an opportunity to renew your license, like in Gautrain, all the important spaces in the communities. And I can assure you, Honorable Member, that we should be able statistically, either by next year and so on, or close to the date, give you the breakdown, but it's going fast. Where we've got challenges, we are unlocking the challenges and the bottlenecks, so that beyond March, getting a driver's license in the Republic of South Africa should not be a nightmare. And to renew a driver's license should not be a nightmare that is riddled with corruption, of you have to bribe your way all up in terms of the work that we are doing. We are rolling out the mobile DLTC across the country to reach out to our people. So you'll see me in the next coming weeks with my team rolling out these mobile DLTCs in the country for people to get renew their driver's license, but also to get new driver's license. So watch that. That's what is coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable J. Noluchungu, third supplementary question.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, we have a problem of almost 74 youth unemployment in the country. At the moment, the online renewal fee in Gauteng is 250, which is more expensive than the rate charged in the Western Cape. Why are you not working towards standardizing driver's license renewal fees across the country in order to lower the cost, particularly for the unemployed? Given the fact that possession of a driver's license is critical to getting jobs for more of our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
I think we're working on a concurrence with my counterparts in the provinces to address some of these challenges and also policy gaps in our driver's license regime in the country. So there's a whole lot of things we're working on. Standardization is one of the things we're considering because in this particular instance, it is only the Central Shareholder Committee that can make those recommendations and we should be able to implement. So it's something that we need to address and also avoid the discrepancies. So I fully agree with you. Is one of the things that we need to consider going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable KP Sitole.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Minister. Whether this system of centralized bookings will be accessible in the rural areas, which are often without internet access, and where people require driving license to make a living. If so, what measure are this department taking to address this shortcoming? If not, what alternative arrangement will be made to also bring easy to of access to rural communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Sutole. The Honorable Minister.
Ilungu elihloniphekileyo ubaba uJobe, the centralized booking izofuna ama provinces ukuthi angenelele ngoba it's not the prerogative of the minister, ifuna nama provinces. So through that shareholder committee of the RTMC, ilonto ekufuneka nayo sifakele izibuko sibheke silungisa kwamanje angeke ngisho lutho ngakho ngoba angakayibheki kwamina. So njengoba usoyiphakamisile la into ekufuneka ukuthi sifakele izibuko sifake kwi-agenda ye-shareholders in terms of the RTMC to seek concurrence from the provinces. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question number 214 has been asked by the Honorable Semauke to the Minister of Public Enterprise.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the question. There are two parts to the question. In respect of the first, for the period 31st of March 2021, or that end of the financial year, Transnet experienced challenges due to the nationwide COVID lockdown and its resultant effects on both human beings and the economy, resulting in significant volume reduction. Transnet's revenue decreased by 10.5% to 67.3 billion rands, whereas in the previous year, it was 75 billion rands. And this was due to a 13.7% decline in rail freight volumes, again, because of the various lockdowns, 26.4% decline in pipeline volumes, that's the fuel volumes, 11.5% decline in port container throughput, mainly as a result of the nationwide lockdown, both here and elsewhere in the world. And Transnet's performance was against the backdrop of South Africa's real GDP contraction of 7% in 2020, followed on GDP growth of only 0.2%, which was recorded in 2019. This was the worst South African GDP performance since the Great Depression years of the 1930s. And similar effects, of course, was experienced by economies elsewhere in the world. In addition, the net operating expenses increased by 16% to 47.8 billion rands. It was previously 41 billion rands, mainly due to fixed costs that were not did not decrease in line with the reduced activity. And some of these are personnel costs, maintenance costs, and security costs, unbudgeted third-party claims relating to a significant legal matter, and environmental damage arising from fuel theft incidents, which also resulted in increased security costs to the tune of about 5.6 billion rands. Unbudgeted COVID-19 related expenses amounted to 232 million rands, and of course the high outstanding debt. The second part of the question talks about a declining management standards. As far as the top management is concerned, that's an excellent group of people, and there is no decline, as far as I can see, in the management standards. However, corrupt and dishonest elements still exist within the Transnet framework and still have to be dealt with, although much progress has been recorded in this regard. The qualified audit opinion is the fourth one in a row since 2018, and is as a result, as I explained earlier on, of incomplete reporting of irregular expenditure, particularly during the state capture period. And what we have appealed to both the Auditor General and the Accountant General in the Treasury is to ring fence the irregular expenditure during the state capture period and deal with the irregular expenditure in the year under review or under audit. And we still don't have enough progress. And the slow pace of condonation in the Treasury also does not help this process as well, where proof is available. In the last financial year, a loss control officer has been appointed And this will ensure that interventions are made on audits that have been reported and condoned. And the management team is focused on dealing with all the historical matters that I referred to earlier and driving Transnet's growth and profitability. Transnet remains committed to continuing to enhance consequence management efforts and investigating PFMA-related transgressions. It might be of note, both for honorable members in the chamber and elsewhere, and indeed the public, that external auditors that made hundreds of millions of rands of fees from Transnet audits never reported any corruption of a significant order that we are now discovering as a result of the state capture process. And the question is why? And why is the regulatory body not doing anything about that? So serious questions need to be asked about the previous management, CEOs, CFOs, capital projects heads, and money was diverted, Chairperson, from maintenance budgets and allocations to capital projects so that deals like the 1064 deal that Honorable Singh referred to can actually go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Minister, the Honorable Senator.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will be taking this question on her behalf. I'd really like the Minister to listen to this question with her voice in mind, because I think she'd really like it for me to convey it properly. Minister, the reality is that Transnet was a profit-making entity as recently as 2018. And trouble started when you claimed to be cleaning the entity of those you're accused of being the agents of state capture. The same is happening now at Eskom, and we're now dealing with the mess that is the load shedding that we're faced with now. So what are the reasons why almost all the SOEs that you are presiding over collapsing? And how long are you going to be blaming the previous administration for your failure to manage SOEs?
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Chair, let me clarify. I'm not blaming, inverted commas, previous employees or managers. I'm actually accusing them of mismanaging and allowing or being part of corrupt activities at these entities. And what we are responsible for since 2018 is to put the major SOEs on the right kind of footing, as my colleague Minister Mbalula is trying to do with Prasa, and other colleagues are trying to do with other entities as well. So if it was profit-making, as it might have been up to 2018, those statements, as I said earlier on, need to be interrogated to check whether, in fact, proper financial disclosures actually took place. And I already indicated that external auditors didn't do their job during that period. And had they done their job properly, we would have been in a much better position today than we are. As far as Eskom is concerned and load shedding, the Honourable Member needs to get the facts right. Load shedding has been around for more than 10 years, long before we took responsibility for Eskom. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The second supplementary question by the Honourable T. Malinga.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. It's Honourable Chabalala. I'm going to take the question. Minister, thank you so much for the response. I think the question was in relation to the theft that we're experiencing within Eskom. Maybe perhaps for me, what is important, and for South Africa, what is important is to really ask the question is that, do we have any other alternatives that maybe Transnet is looking into to deal with the issue of cable theft so that we can circumvent or we deal with these root causes of such losses that we're experiencing? Perhaps moving alternatives from metal to copper, something of that nature. And if there is that type of an implementation currently, can we also share with the country without us putting ourselves into trouble with the criminals, because then they will know what are the alternatives that we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
Chairperson and Honourable Member, yes, there are alternatives being looked at, and cable theft, as Minister Patel will also tell you, is a major problem in this country. And we, for some reason, aren't able to get the law enforcement authorities to identify how these syndicates actually operate. where the copper goes once the copper cables are stolen, how are they actually melted and made into blocks, and how do they get out of this country? But the question is, we have to find alternatives. And yes, there are alternatives. There's 3 different types. One is to use diesel locomotives, and that's not going to fit in with the decarbonization project that we have, but we might have, Transnet might have to resort to that. There might be other forms of protecting cable that is being explored at the moment as well. And thirdly, there's an experiment currently with one of the sectors of the economy where, let's say, modern technology, taking your warning into account, modern technology is being utilized to both detect any malfeasance by outsiders and syndicates in relation to copper cable theft and sometimes even stealing of railway lines. And the jury is still out, but within the next month, we will know how effective that modern technology is. And if it works, and this is being done at the expense of the private sector itself, in order that they can secure their exports, we might be able to utilize that elsewhere within the Transnet network. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, the time allocated for questions has expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed and answered. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned. Thank you very much.